Committee of Tuesday, March 27th, 2012, to order at 7:09 p.m. And ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Your first order of business is the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Nolan moves passed, seconded by Mr. Wood. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. For the record, Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Pedro are absent at this time. Next, we have discussion and a vote to approve the FY13 budget. I know there are some amendments to be discussed this evening. I'll turn it over to Dr. Thorne.
Good evening. In your information this evening, on the last page of your packet with the revenues on the first page, we have the adjustments for this evening. So I'll have now to do our adjustments on the last page, and then we'll also take you through our potential concerns going forward, and then we'll open up to questions from the committee. So Renato, please take us, if you could, the last page of the first packet.
Good evening. The proposed budget, the page is marked proposed budget amendments, and you'll see at the top revenues 55,152,928. That was the original superintendent's proposed budget that we submitted a couple of weeks ago. The first four numbers are adjustments to revenues. We're recommending use of some of the fund balance we have for educational supplies, and we're using this because we don't think this is really going to be like using a fund balance that we're going to have to make up. We've identified a number of items in the budget between the GEMS net and other things that we're buying, kindergarten, some furniture and other things that total just about this $100,000. So there's kind of like some one-time purchases we feel in the budget that won't have to be made again. So when this revenue goes away next year, the expenditures will also go away. So we've used $110,000 for that. Section 125, co-pays and retiree health care insurance. I've looked at the numbers a little bit closer, and we're going to recommend, I believe, for a working rate, working rate that would create that people pay their co-pays off. I think would generate about $68,000, $69,000 more. You see them in the two categories. And then the last item we put back in the middle school sports. You'll see that down below. We'll then also put back in the $30,000 of support that we received from the Booster Club this year. So that would bring you to a new revenue total of $55,362,530. Any question I want to go on, Mr. Chairman?
No, just for the record, on the fund balance educational support, what's the current balance in that fund prior to the 110?
Well, no, that was for the, it's on page 92, and I believe it's 300,000+. You see it on page 92, Mr. Chairman?
92.
Oh, the audit.
Right, it's not page 92. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good, it is 92.
Yeah. And it's currently 312,000.
So it's currently $312,000 and $315, so we proposed inside this budget 110. You would have the remainder left, which would be somewhere around 202, well, which is 202,315. And so what this basically does is sets up the expense side of the budget for the same amount, $55,362,530. So the revenue adjustments, for those in the audience, that currently, what had been proposed was 55152,928, and with these adjustments, it would be 55362,530. Any questions on any of those three lines before? Okay.
On the expenditure side, obviously we started with the same 55,152,928, the proposed budget that was originally submitted. And we've added back in some things that we've heard from the committee that they wanted back into the budget. Library books, $20,000. You see that spread out between the 8 schools, so it's not just in one area of the budget. Step adjustments in lanes. In both BF Norton and North Cumberland Middle School, there was some advanced lanes and some steps that weren't included in the budget, and I discovered them as I went through the second time. And, some of the steps, some of the advanced lanes, people get them awarded 2 different times a year, and when those budgets were originally done, people have since gotten advanced lanes that will be paid to them next year. Middle school math consumables, this is the math program that Dr. Thornton is going to proposing at both the 2 middle schools. And we've learned that the consumables that we'll purchase will be about $15,000 less than we originally estimated, so we're making that adjustment. The charter schools, this is based on the conversation we've been talking about. We had an estimate of 43 charter school children next year going to Blackstone Valley. We've gotten a number right now that there's actually 74. So we've used 80 for a number because we think that's what the maximum could be, and there's still children, I understand, on that waiting list. And we've made some other adjustments. For example, Beacon looks like right now where we had 40, they're actually 37. We've taken that down a couple, and we budgeted exactly what the other schools what they're running at right now. That nets to be a $167,000 adjustment. Athletics, we put back $67,000 that we needed to put back in for transportation, lacrosse, and middle school sports. Pension, Social Security, Medicare, whatever, an adjustment of $18,699, and those are basically the result of the next group of adjustments. When you change salaries, you change all those other things. We've added in, we've taken out a high school salary stipends of $8,083 that we saw that were duplicated in another line item in the budget. High school in-house detention, and you want to explain this one, or do you want me to?
Sure. Currently in school suspension is a full-time FTE and 5 days a week. Currently looking at modeling it 3 days a week and doing it in a different way. We wouldn't have the step 10 person we have in C right now, would have a host of individuals, but the savings there is that going 3 days a week.
Ms. Sandy?
I just want to make sure I understand this. We have a teacher, a step 10 teacher, whose entire day is just covering in-school suspensions 5 days a week?
Correct. So to me right now, looking at being more efficient, 3 days a week, we still want to offer that as an alternative to suspension out of school, but 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for example, we still believe we can appropriately offer the amount of time we need to have the students in that program. But 5 days a week, I thought I could shave that down to 3.
Is there any idea, and perhaps Mrs. School could tell us, how many students on average are on ISS each day?
It can vary from the low from 2 to 3 to 15. Depends on.
Is it ever 0?
I'd have to defer to Mrs. Gould. Is it ever 0?
Usually the first couple days of school it is. And when it is 0, we use that teacher for something else.
Like
We have, she's a special education teacher, so we'll have her go into a academic enrichment room and work with kids or something like that, because it's only a daily thing at that time, at that point.
Is there anything in the contract that says that a person doing ISS duty needs to be a certified teacher?
Not to my knowledge, it's just what we did historically in Cumberland.
I'd like to go on the record as being, thinking that we need to look at that very carefully, because that's actually shocking to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next line item, high school special ed teacher, that's up $36,000 because this person will move into a vacant job that was there. The in-house detention person won't be losing the job, but we will use them in special ed instead. So that $76,000 salary will go into the special ed salaries at the high school, and a $40,000 salary will come out. And then the high school salaries again, 1.5 art teachers and a 0.1 music needed to feel is needed so that Dr. Thornton can implement using the 7th period. And then the last item, we just feel that not every job will be full all season. People run out of sick time. People, there are people that at certain times of the year go unpaid. And so we'll put an attrition number of $103,000 in to balance the budget. We really didn't have any other place to go, so we're using some attrition.
Any questions on any of those?
Just a question about art teachers. So we're adding 1.5 back in. Is that correct?
Correct. In the school team, we can talk further.
There'll be 3.5.
Yeah.
3.5?
To run the 7th period schedule, the schedules in high schools run by student selection. We know that in Cumberland, we feel we're offering enough fine arts experiences. The regs say students must have multiple experiences in apply before they graduate. I really can't say we were robust in that area, so we went by student selection, and kids selected, music, art, etc. for their 7th period, and that's really a good thing, I think. While on that topic, is down the road, I would expect, if we do run the 7th grade schedule, the next conversation to start would be around graduation requirements. A little footnote for you. Cumberland currently has the lowest threshold of 20 current units to graduate. My experience has been many high schools go to 24 to graduate. Now, if you run the 7th period schedule for the freshmen coming in, they potentially get 28 offerings over 4 years. So it makes sense we'd want to look at what we require to graduate. 20 is the minimum in Rhode Island. I don't want to be a minimum. I want to raise that bar. That's a conversation to have. You start with the freshmen coming in, that kind of thing. So that's something, first we run the schedule, then we see what opportunities are opened up from there.
And just for clarification, so we have 3.5 art teachers. We had 2 previously?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Before we move on, is there anyone, I know that public comment is actually after the vote. Is there anyone in attendance who'd like to speak on any item in the budget, whether it be revenue or expenditures at this time?
So I have one footnote, but okay, before we work that down. In terms of suspension, when we do suspend a student since 2006, is one thing was pointed out to me, by law, we must comply with their IEPs. So that was the rationale for having a special educator as the in-school suspension person. Prior to 06, it was just suspend kids, just send them, and it was much looser, but right now we do. So I think that's why probably Cumberland is not special educator. That's my thought on that. Still, we can look at it.
So you had in-school suspension at your prior schools?
We did. In extra expenditure was kind of a bad model, I'll admit to you, it was potpourri. One period was teacher A, next period teacher B. She's very strict, he's very easy. Mixed messages on how we deliver the programming. It's good to have one person, no matter how you do it. Charaho was one individual. It was just a younger teacher, a lower step person.
What would be the reason, I know you're new, so maybe you wouldn't know, but perhaps anyone on the committee or someone that's known for longer, how does a step 10 teacher get put into that job when we're the lowest, when our per pupil funding is so low anyway, and we're cutting to the bone? That's a $65,000, $884 job to cover in-school suspension.
76,000.
I'm sorry?
76,000. The difference is we're gonna fund
$76,000 a
it.
year to cover in-school suspensions exclusively.
Well, what happened is that person was in a job. I've been here, it's been the same person the 5 years I've been here. That person was once a step 4, 5, 6, that's just left and stayed in the job, moved up the ladder of steps.
So then who could describe, now I guess, so describe what happens in the room. So teacher sits in the room and is proctoring an in-school suspension for the day, and the kids have their work for the day. And teacher does what?
The student has an IEP, so we're working with the students directly.
She also goes to their teachers and gets the work that they have for the day. She gives tests if they need it, she helps them, she works with the kids. She does a very, very good job, but I don't disagree with you that it's in this kind of budget climate, it may not be something that we can do.
In this model, that's not going to happen anymore. If you approve this, that's not going to happen going forward.
So do we have any idea what it would look like?
Right now, we're modeling a long-term sub, 3 days a week to start the year.
So that's a per diem, right? And what is that about?
10,008, that's why you see the 65,000. The net 76 minus the 10,8 will get you to the.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Joyce Malucha, and this is Maureen Motto. We're both library media specialists here at the high school. And we're here to advocate for the library secretary position at the high school that has been proposed for elimination. And before we tell you about the importance of the job, we want to tell you a little bit about our ever-changing responsibilities. We spoke in December to a subcommittee about the achievement subcommittee, and we described how our roles have evolved We're no longer the traditional librarians of the past. In fact, our job description is the same as the other librarians in the system, but what we do is very different from what all the other librarians do. We continue to do our librarian tasks, ordering, working with students and teachers, creating budgets, supporting the curriculum. We teach students how to use our databases, how to find the Hunger Games, how to work with Word, PowerPoint, Excel, whatever the student is coming to the library for. But as I said, our job descriptions are different. And although there are two of us, between Maureen and I, we teach 6 e-seminar classes. And in fact, we're both only on duty together 1 period a week. Either Maureen's teaching or I'm teaching, and the other one is manning the library, or one of us is on our prep and the other one is manning the library. So there's usually only one librarian on duty at any given time. In addition to e-seminar, we've trained all teachers and students 4 years ago in the portfolio system. We continue to do that. We work with new students and new teachers. We teach students how to upload their artifacts, how to write their reflections, how to make their tours before graduation. And we continue to train new teachers and new students. We're the go-to person at Visit Glitch in the portfolios. And last spring, I became a tri-chair of the Cumberland High School NEAS committee, which, as you know, the NEAS visit will take place next March. I've been on a visiting team at South Kingstown. I've been for PD professional training for it, and I've also been on a NEAS assessment 2-day professional development training. And next year, with it being the big year for the visiting team coming in, I'll have a lot more duties. Looking forward to that. I know one of the other tri-chairs is pregnant too, so she's going to be out for a while, so it'll be a busy year. In addition to that, I'm also the primary site coordinator for the VHS, which is the virtual high school. That's where students come into the library, log on with a teacher somewhere else in the country, and take a virtual online course. However, I have a lot of duties to go along with that too. I have to create the student account in the VHS site. I schedule courses, students for courses, but again, that's online and their account. It's not our own scheduling here at the high school. I have them go through an orientation to learn how to use the system. I answer questions, provide technological help. I correspond with their teachers. I have to let them know if there's an illness or an issue with a student, or when vacations come up, I have to be in constant email. Right now, I think we have 18 students, so I have 18 different teachers I'm corresponding with at the same time. Every 2 weeks, I print out a grade report, and that goes in the student file, and I email it to the guidance counselor and the case manager if there is one. I also put grades in the grade book and ask them for that. Then last fall, I became department chair of the FATA department, so I work with 9 other teachers in fine technical arts, drama, music. I work with preparing a budget, lead department and curriculum meetings, and evaluate members of the department. So you may ask, what does all this have to do with the library secretary? I apologize for the lateness. I did send an email out, but I'm sure you haven't all had a chance to look at that with my letter and with a complete list of our secretary's duties. She performs the more traditional duties of the library, such as circulation, library support, clerical services, summer reading program. She works with both the English and social studies teacher and sends that to the public library, sends the books out so our students can use our books over the summer. And supervises library aides, and that's just somewhat the secretary does. And with her presence there, that allows us to be able to work on all these other new initiatives that have come along the pipe, because it is a lot more on our plate than a normal librarian would be, and I'm afraid if we lost our clerk, that it would be much more difficult to keep up with all of the duties that we have. Maureen is also becoming a site coordinator for VHS too, so next year the program will be in full bloom, so we'll have many more students in that program. So as I said, our roles have changed, and we welcome the opportunity to be valued resources in the education of our students. But please understand, the position of library secretary is also critical to our success. So we ask for your support for the position of library secretary. Thank you for your time.
On the position of library secretary, what's the salary on that?
So it's similar to a salary of the position has been cut down to like a TA's salary. I don't believe it works in the summer. Positions funded for the summer, it hasn't been the last couple of years. So it's like 20-something thousand plus fringe, but 30 plus thousand.
But, if a member of the school committee wanted to make a motion to put that in, just procedurally, where would they do that? Because even tonight, when we make these adjustments, we're going to take single votes on each line item. So we'll make sure that they show up in the budget as they show up here. Only because I don't really know any other way to bring it on, so that's how I want to do that.
That would be on page, it would be on page 21. About
2/3 the way down.
3 inches from the bottom of the page. This is clerk, school secretary,
Right,
school library, school management guidance.
right. So under the school library, that's 24/7/23?
That's what it was last year. Salary and then fringes on top of it.
Is there anyone else in attendance who would like to speak on revenue or expenditure? Whatever you have, whatever you like. So staying on that same line of questioning, under the expenditures, which you have listed, I'll go over them again. Under library books, that would be placed back in the budget at 20,000. There's a line item in the budget that says library books.
Is in each of the elementary, middle schools, and high schools, you'll see, if you go to the materials and supplies, you'll see a line item, library books, and you'll see the money that's been put in.
So you're going to be dispersing that 20,000 over
Yeah.
more than one line item?
Yes. That was the total we've taken out from most schools.
So following that same train of thought, under step adjustments, lanes, that says BF and North Cumberland Middle School, so that's going to be 2 line items?
It was in the, well, it was a couple of positions in each of those, but it was in the BF North Cumberland Middle School salary accounts, yes.
So recognizing that we're not going to fix everything one cycle or so, going forward, though, the way the school budget is, just like the town budget, each line item is sacred in itself, correct? So when we're going to make amendments this evening, it's not going to be to those line items. And from now on, we should. So we want them like individually, even if that means that would be 4 separate amendments under expenditure library books. We're going to want to do that. But and for those in attendance, I don't think anyone saw any of this prior to this evening. No, this is not.
No, I didn't,
It is
today.
right. Which I mean, we did receive some emails about that, but on any budget process, any legislative body, there's always amendments that could come from a member of that body that night that theoretically could never have been spoken to in the previous public hearing. So that is something that happens, but it's not an intentional. If it was a big number, if someone made a $2 million motion and never spoke of it during the public hearing, I would say that's probably inappropriate, but really, none of these are of that nature. So the overall total that's suggested tonight is a $209,602 amendment on the revenue and expenditure side. That's the total. We talked about the revenues, is how we got there 110 in educational supplies, which is fund balance. This section 125 code page 47,890. Retiree health care at 21,712, and then middle school sports booster clubs at 30, comprised of 209,602. And so following down on the other lines, the middle school math consumables, that's that reduction.
That's in the 2 middle school budgets and math textbooks.
Right. In charter schools, that's just going to show under tuitions.
Yep, that's page. That's on page 45.
And that's going to be more than one line item as well.
Excuse me?
Is that going to be more than one line item?
It's various schools. For example, Beacon, my original budget was 40 students. We're now down to 37 from when we put that budget together. Some students are left there. So I use the 37 for now. That's what we have. You know, and I give you the number of what I budgeted for each of them.
Okay. Yeah, I just think that I'm a stickler on those little details, and I should have, I could have handled that prior to this evening too, so I'm not, that's my bad. But on the charter school, just to be clear, we had budgeted 44 under the BB prep level, but there's some explanation as to why we missed that number by that much, and most of it's because it was our fault that we didn't really read that correctly.
There was a handout given out that showed 44 children, and well, we also had a phone conversation too, where they were estimating 40 children, but on the handout in rather small print, it was just, for some reason, that was the 44 children was just their estimate on what free and reduced kids would be going. And there's another piece to that, I guess comes up to 80 kids.
For planning purposes, for the next 2 years, we expect 80 more each year. The third year, it should just be the Ks coming in. So 2 more jumps of 80, and then just the K.
Okay.
So
Ms. Sandy?
in the future, have we made it so that error won't happen again? Because we'll either
Next year, we're just gonna model.
confirm with RIDE in advance. I mean, I know we need to model, it's,
It'll just be 80 next 2 years. That's the max as far as we understand it. It'll be 80, and then with the K comes in.
okay. And also, of the 40 that go to Beacon and down to 37, are they returning to the district? Do we know?
I would imagine they did. I just know there's 37 people on their latest bill, and there were 40 earlier in the year.
And does the free and reduced lunch, does that affect how much we are paying? Like, whether it's a free reduced lunch child or not, does that affect how much we're sort of
Well, it
passing
affects the
through?
overall state aid payment. I don't
Okay.
believe it affects what our payment is, but it affects state aid, because there's 3 pieces of the state aid. There's the piece that every student gets, that $8,000+ for, the basic education plan. Then there's another $2,000-3,000, depending on the amount, for students that are also free and reduced. And then the last piece of it is the taxing effort of the local community.
Okay, so in reality, the distinction that RIDE made for us doesn't really matter for us. It's not a necessary distinction.
Well, I don't think, no. It is in the overall handouts that they were handed out, it was, but for us, we're budgeting the same $6,154 payment on all those children next year that we'll be paying.
Yeah, but I think, it's an interesting question. I mean, why would they send a form that would just show that number for that particular group? Is that what you were thinking? I mean, why
Because
are we
if
naming
it doesn't
confusion?
impact the amount we, we're like the pass-through, money comes through us and it sends it. If we pay the same, no matter what the child's socioeconomic situation is, why does that number ever come to us?
Right.
We pay the 6,150, well, it will next year. This year, we're paying 5,689 for each student.
But you get the point, why
Yeah, I
I think,
send
I
something?
think one piece would be for budget.
I'll send an email to Chris and Cole and see
Yeah,
what it's like.
maybe it's not even the finance office, more the assessment office. As you know, with AYP and assessments, they track subgroups. It's a subgroup we track. Maybe it's not a function of Alex's office, more the assessment conversation.
Okay. Mr. Wood?
Can we go back to page 21? I'd just like to,
Excuse me, what page?
21, I'd talk about oversized classes and lost prep. With the addition of a seventh period, would that reduce the amount of children we have above class size? And if so, can that number be lowered? I know we've already lowered it, so.
Mrs. Gould's here, I think I defer to her to kind of try to field that one.
Actually, Mr. Wood, theoretically it would if we had more teachers, but we still have the same number of teachers teaching the same number of courses, and with 7 periods, usually you increase the staff by several when you go from 6 to 7. We're only increasing it a tiny bit, so in fact the classes might be slightly more crowded.
Do you have a number or percentage of how many classes are overcrowded?
I can go back to I can probably get it to you from the tallies. We haven't run them yet, but I would say most classes, the way the classes are say, math classes, you have some honors classes, some A2 classes, which college prep classes, and you have some A1 classes, which we try to keep a little smaller because maybe the kids need some more attention. So we in the honors and A2 classes, the classes are, virtually all the classes are 25, 26, 27, 28. And the smaller classes would be around 20 in all the subject areas.
By contract, it'd be 24.
26 is by contract, and you can pay overages for up to 30. In the future, maybe that we'll get a little more staffing in the future.
Okay, so moving down that, so athletics, 67,000. Is that a single line item, or is that?
It's in 2 lines, it's in coaches' stipends and in the transportation. On page 42.
I just want to make sure that the record's clear as to where they're coming from based on the fact that we're not going to amend each individual line. Under pensions, social security, Medicare, I think right off the
I'm just
bat-
saying, as you add jobs in, my formulas are built in to automatically calculate into those line items to do they're linked so that I don't have to do it by hand.
Right, so by very nature, that's more than one line item.
Many lines.
It's
Yeah. Just clarify, that's all. High school salary stipends. That one line item?
There were 2, there was a stipend for chorus, which now I guess would be during the regular school day, not after school, so we took that stipend out, it's an after-school type stipend. And then Dr. Thornton reduced his Saturday, that was the Saturday school.
Yeah, we still had the Saturday and we previously.
And the money was still though in the, the budget for other activities like the and that kind of stuff, so I noticed that and we took that up.
Okay.
That was 7,200 and the other is 883.
Right. For a total of 8,083.
Right.
We've already talked about high school in-house detention, which was 65,884. So that one is one single line item, correct? Is in-house detention, did that show?
It's one person, it's one person.
That's one person, I'll show it to you.
And so, right, we already went
You
through
want
that.
to see it?
so-
What
We already
page?
did.
They found it?
We already did, yeah. High school special ed teachers have 64, no?
That's
36.
special
36,
educators on
111.
page 21.
Okay, and high school salaries, 1.5 art teachers and .1 music. That's 64,931. That's obviously multiple.
On page 21 also.
And attrition is spread out. Attrition is spread out.
Well, no, I've got it in just one line item right now. We'll spread it out because we don't know where it's going to occur. So I show it for now on page page 27 on the bottom. I don't know where that's going to occur yet. But as it occurs, I'll move money into that account.
Okay, so, but, all right. So just to be as,
For budget purity, let's say, at some point in time, if that's going to leave that line item, and it's going to go someplace.
Yeah, we're going to close that line item to zero
right.
and take the savings where it occurs.
All right, and so at some point in time, there's going to be a budget with, in front of the school committee that has that inside those line
Yeah,
items.
budget adjustments sometime.
Right, at some point in time, so that we know exactly where it went. Right? Okay. All right, so when you add up those numbers and subtract the other ones, you end up with the same number that you had for revenue, which is 209,602. So the actual amendment to the entire budget will be in an amount of $209,602, which will change it from 55152,928 to 55362,530. Is that correct? Okay. So, are there any questions or anything at this point in time before I would entertain a motion to? So we're going to start with the revenue side. And I did notice that we started out with 312,000, but last year's budget, or I should say the year that we're currently in, we have 100,000 from that education supplies in there. So assuming that we spend that this year, which I'm not sure if we are or we aren't, but if we do, that number is going to be down to 112,000 or 102, whichever.
We also know, and I'll tell you how we arrived at that. We looked at the amount of educational supplies left in this year's budget left to spend. And we feel that there will be money left in those line items. Now, hopefully, it won't all have to go to balance the budget. We feel there'll be some money left in there that we move into that account. We could slide forward and still hopefully hold the as much of the 300 still together.
Okay.
If you look at the monthly budget reports I sent out, if you look at some of the schools, you'll see that, some of them there's $28,000, $30,000 still left. And we are getting kind of late into the school year now, but, some things.
Right, but if it followed budget, the school committee approved a budget last year that took 100,000 out of that amount. The audited number was prior to that being taken out. So if in fact it happens, we'd be down to 212, and then another 110 would bring it down to 102. And obviously, if you don't spend it, then it stays the same. So just because I think we have to do it, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion to increase fund balance education supplies from 0 to 110,000? Ms. Bowling moves passage. Do we have a second? Seconded by Ms. Teal and Mr. Wood. Is there any further discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. Next, we need a motion to amend the section 125 copay from $1,200,000 to $1,247,890.
So,
Ms. Bowling moves passage. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Teal. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Next amendment would be for retiree health care and life insurance. from $925,000 to $946,712. Ms. Williams' passage. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sanzi, thank you. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. Thank you. And an amendment, middle school sports booster clubs from 0 to 30,000 even. Ms. Williams' passage.
Second.
Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0 as well. We need a motion to approve the revenue side of the FY 2013 budget from 55152 to 55152,928 to 55362,530. Mr. Williams passes. Second by Ms. Bolio. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. Now on your expenditures, we'll just take it just as the list is. Under library books, see, here's where I run into a problem. So we're not going to be able to do that because we're not coming from separate line items to other line items. So you'll have to bear with us for one more year. We'll have to change that. So we need a motion to approve an increase in spread throughout the budget on the library books for $20,000.
So moved.
Ms. Santi moves passage. Seconded by Ms. Bowler and Mr. Wood. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. Next motion would be to increase step adjustments backslash lanes BF in North Cumberland Middle School in the amount of $27,868.
So moved.
Ms. Bowling was passage.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0. Need a motion to reduce under middle school math consumables in the amount of $15,000.
So moved.
Ms. Bowling was passage.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Teal. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0 as well. Thank you. Under charter schools, this would be an increase spread out in the amount of 167012.
Motion to approve?
Ms. Santi moves passage. Second by Ms. Bolio. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Passed 1-0, 5-0. Thank you. Under athletics, we have an increase in the amount of $67,000.
So moved.
Ms. Bollinger was passage.
Second.
Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wood.
Dr. Thornton, last year, there was a, I don't know if it was a clause or an unwritten clause that at the middle school level, if the money was not raised, their revenue wasn't raised, the program didn't go on. Is that still, is all that still in place?
It's working well right now. My second month that we met with the middle school folks, and we talked about a plan to raise the funds, and they had been hitting all their marks all along the way.
It was also talked about that both schools would have to have a teacher for it to actually run. So for example, North couldn't just have all, their teams, and McCord only have a field. This was
Currently, it's the same continuum, same process, teams are in both of the schools.
Right, and one thing I was actually asked, that freshman sports is not in this, right?
No, it's not.
Funded the way it was this year.
Thank you.
The reason that adjustment was 67,000 and not higher, because lacrosse was 19, middle school, we didn't take all the money out of middle school sports. We left a lot of the item materials and stuff in because we figured if there wasn't sports, there would be money needed for something like intramurals or something. So that's why it doesn't come to that. We didn't take it all out. We only took 67 out for local.
Further discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against
Aye.
it? Passes 5-0. Under pensions, social security, and Medicare, it's an increase in the amount of $18,699. Ms. Bollinger's passage. Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, under high school salaries and stipends, with a reduction in the amount of $8,083.
Motion to approve.
Ms. Bowling moves passage. Second by Ms. Teal. Discussion on that motion.
I just want
Ms.
to
Teal.
be clear, I'm sorry. That included a stipend for music or art?
After-school chorus. And since it's going to run during the regular day, there won't be an after-school stipend anymore. It's not going to be, 7 periods going to be part of the school day.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, under high school in-house detention, we have a reduction in the amount of $65,884. Ms. Bowling moves passage. Second by Ms. Sanzi. Any discussion? Mr. Wood.
This goes to a 3-day-a-week program. What
Yes.
happens to, like, if they're in detention for 5 days? What happens those other 2 days?
This only has 5 days of ISS. There are other ways to skin that cat. For example, we also have after-school, long-term detention, combinations thereof. So say someone got in trouble, they might go 1 day of ISS, 1 day after school, next day ISS. We can kind of dole up the penalty of all kinds of ways. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Ms. Sanzi?
This may not be the time, Mr. Chairman, so let me know if I should ask it after, but when is the right time to ask questions about how ISS and other disciplinary things are being handled in other buildings in terms of expense? Nowadays.
As an ISS, you mean? Do we have an ISS program?
Like at the middle school, does it exist? If it does, who's covering it?
Dr. Joe Lacy, you can speak to the middle if you want to appropriate. You could.
The middle schools handle in-school suspensions in the office with the assistant principal and principal.
Thank you.
That would be cost nothing, correct?
Right.
That would be cost nothing.
Also, I would say though, the sheer volume of the middle school versus the high school is different in the capacity of volume.
But in looking for some dollar, right, that was a good question. So there is no other place for us to gain any expense reductions in any other school? with regard
That's
to-
correct. That's correct. That category is.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the discussion. And then all in favor? Those against, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Under high school special ed teachers, we have an increase in the amount of $36,101.
Motion to approve.
Ms. Bowling moves passage. Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Those against, that passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, under high school salaries, 1.5 art teachers and .1 music, that's an increase of $64,931. Ms. Bowling moves passage. Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion? Mr. Wood?
How many music teachers is that? I probably missed Mr. Visuals. But total, how many?
Total music teachers, that was .1.
What is it? I think it's 6 at the beginning.
I think it's,
Seven total in the district.
In the district?
I think it's 6.
At the high school then?
Well, not counting,
No.
oh, in the middle school too, there's Bowser and Davis, so.
High school, middle school, what's our total if we're .4 with this, with these 1.4?
1.4 at
We
the high
have
school.
1.1 now, and we added 0.4. There's 1.5.
I can read you the numbers if you want. It's interesting.
That's 180,000 per budget. 1.4.
What's the question?
The number of high school,
1.4.
at the high school, is budgeted at 103,000?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and what Mr. Pedro's presentation was prior to this meeting, he's modeling, at this point in time, maybe just clarify that, because Mr. Pedro is not here, so I just want to make sure that his presentation is represented here. So he was a little bit concerned that, so under the current budget, it's 1.4 with this change, right? and he felt that, that there's a possibility that working within the schedule, which I have absolutely no idea how that works, but there's a possibility that you would get to, he felt it needed to be 1.5 at minimum. I think I could accurately represent that.
That's correct.
So right now, the budget would be 1.4, the way it is, and so the rest of these dollars are actually towards the art teachers, not towards music. Right? So clearly that, he originally had felt it was 1.2, but it's modeled at 1.4, and there's either a 0.1 or 0.2, which I guess after talking with Dr. Thornton and such, it's always a possibility he could make he could come back and look for an amendment for another 0.1 or 0.2. But currently, right now, it passed. He's in his mind, he's a little short. Is that accurate? Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a motion on this one yet? Yes. We have a motion and a second for the discussion. All in favor? All against? That passes 5-0 as well. And under a line item that is in the budget but will change, goes in multiple lines, is attrition and a reduction in the expense line of $103,042.
Motion approved.
Ms. Williams' passage. Yes. Second by Mr. Wood and Ms. Teal. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0. The total of all those changes, 11 line items, but they affect more than 11. It is an expense increase of the same revenue increase of $209,602, which would bring the expense line to 55362,530. Just for at least for right now, I look for a motion to increase the total expenses from 55,152,928 to 55,362,530.
Motion approved.
Ms. Williams moves passage.
Second.
Second by Ms. Teal. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? That passes 5-0. So before I can take a vote on the entire budget, the only public comment tonight was on the school library. So how are we planning on addressing that particular situation if under what we have currently budgeted?
I would have the 2 librarians get the job done. I mean, quite honestly, these aren't easy cuts to make. But Cumberland has gone a couple of years without really seeing a lot of this. But this is, a lot of districts, this is pretty much what's been happening. We're making tough choices, this or that. And we have a couple of things on the table. We have a clerk in the guidance office, library clerk. So I'm not saying these are preferable things, but to me, we have to balance the budget, and I can't recommend paper cuts that don't come true when we run negative in the spring. So to me, I would have the 2 librarians cover the library. It's again not the best model. It's not fully optimizing, but I think we can still get the job done. That's again, these are not good choices to make, but that's where we are.
Right. Okay, I mean, I know you had this potential budget concern. Did you want to go over these again?
Yes, we did. At some point, we'll take you through those concerns. Yes.
This would be that point. Before I take a vote on the entire budget, but I want to make sure everybody is completely comfortable before we do it.
Why don't I take some, I'll give you some. It's a list of things that are still on our mind going forward in the spring. The first one, obviously, the town appropriation of $1 million. That is something we still have to see through. Number 2, transportation. As you know, early April, we'll get the modeling back from the bus company for the transportation for the district. 1 being the full day K, 2 being the high school start time, and how that play out. Number 3 and 4 are linked to Title I and special education. We know that by putting in the math interventions piece into those. When these grants are written in the springtime, we know that other things currently in the grants may have to come out of the grants. It's kind of a choice in the grants, if you will. For example, maybe we have some specialist time for, say, physical therapy built into the IDEA grant might have to come out. So we have to make those tough choices in the spring. So that'll be a challenge, and those are dollar amounts that represent those numbers there. The meals tax from the governor, as you know, that's something that may or may not come true. He also did say that maybe since collections are better, it'll still come true. That's a concern of ours, to the tune of $373K. So that's also on our to ask.
Okay. Also, you know, the regular monthly report I hand out to the committee shows $934,000 was a budgeted amount for fund balance use in the fiscal 2012 year. We're hoping we can do that without using the majority of that money, and we've used 834 on the 934 in the fiscal 2013 budget. Right now, the last report I passed out to the committee showed about $122,000 shortfall that we have to make up. If we don't make that up, we would have to cut back into that 834 and pull it back into 2012, the balance 12, and we might only have 734 or 634 available, so that's still something we have to accomplish. The healthcare claims, through January and February, we're running with a higher projected positive variance in those accounts based on what actual claims have been running. We've incurred some 4 or 5 weeks in a row where claims have been very heavy. We've had some people with some that have gone in for some severe operations and recurring treatments. It's touched to the point that that number now through the third week of March has dropped just in March from 269 to 170 to 173,000. We have 6 million two budgeted claims. If we spend the entire 6.2 this year, we really should have an 8% increase or so on that 6.2 in the budget, have like 6.8 next year's budget. We're still hoping to go with the same 6.2. So we could have a $500,000 problem yet. Now, we have been prudent in the past. We put some money aside to fall back on. If we were forced to do that, it would be pretty much like using, instead of $834,000 for fund balance, using $1.3 million, it would put us in a really tough position next year to make up all that money in 1 year. The other healthcare claims piece I mentioned is if we successfully eliminate buybacks throughout the district, you know, there's some 125 people there. You have to imagine some amount of those people will return to our plan because we do have a pretty good plan, probably better than many of their spouses have. Without any buyback, if they return to our plan, you'd have to figure there'll be some claims that cost that would be associated with that. That's kind of an unknown number right now, but it could be substantial. It could be something that's not so substantial, but we'll have to see when we get towards the end of the year how, if we do an open enrollment, how many people come back into the plan. And then the last one, we all know the CTA concessions is some $594,000 in the budget that we hope to achieve with that. If you want to say anything about it.
We have spoken with the CTA on a few occasions this past couple of days, and it has gone well, but we have nothing to say tonight as far as a definitive statement, but it has been positive.
Talked with their executive board, but it hasn't yet, you know, it has never gone to the membership or any of that type of stuff, any of the things that at this point. So you see, there is rather a large number there, even with the unknown for the healthcare claims, which could be, you know, 125 people would almost be like adding 25% more people into our health budget if they all came back in. So without that, there's still $3 million that we really have to keep our eye on and be successful with. We have to absolutely get these, you know, we have to be successful on these things to have the balance of 2013 budget.
Do we have any idea when the CPA concessions would likely be complete? So, for example, as we present this to the council.
Well, I think we'd like to have it complete while at least the, you know, before the council acts on the budget, so that if we have to make recommendations to the council, they could make those for us. Just about, would they send us the budget back, or would we go there and make the amendments out of it?
What was that question again?
For example, let's say we didn't do any of the 594, we did a portion of it, and our budget was balanced by some amount. Would we ask the budget back from the council to make changes, or would we recommend changes to them? And they would make it for us, or whatever. They would send it back to us?
Well, you're just asking for my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that if we send, what we're sending includes this, and if it didn't happen, I think they would look to us to make it up. I certainly wouldn't, I don't think they, you know, we have a big request that's part of this budget, and we need this to come in. So if it doesn't come in, then we're going to be making some other reductions in expenses. That's how I'll
No, Normally we make the suggestions or recommendations, but when they send it back to us, so we make them, well, would we take the recommendations there, like we did with this group tonight, and they would make them for us on their floor? That was just my question, I'm not sure how that would go.
I think that would all happen here. So I mean, just to kind of, I think that it's important, and I'm sure I'll bounce all over the place here, but part of this budget does encompass $1 million request from the mayor and the town council. And with the other assumptions, just the CTA concessions of $594, that's included in here, that's an unknown. And once again, as was spoken to by Dr. Thornton, there is the revenue number based on the meals tax, which may or may not be an issue if they find another revenue source, but certainly that's another significant unknown, even if you were to not look at the fact that we have level funded healthcare from FY12, basically about 48,000 more, but hedging that because we have a designated fund balance of 450. But if you just went on those three, you can see that that's a pretty big number. So that's the environment that we are working under. And so I balance that though with the fact that we can't go backwards. And so it is we need every piece of it. We need every one of these. It's not a question of we don't get a CTA concession of $594,000 and we have to take that from a surplus amount. That's really not a good idea, and certainly not something we could sustain. We're looking at deficits projected out in 14, 15 of pretty sizable numbers as well. So this is not something that over the long haul we're in a really solid place. With that being said, there were a few of us that attended a conference this weekend, and it actually was an assistant professor from Bryant University, who actually is a Cumberland resident, who went over the economic outlook in Rhode Island's bumpy road to recovery, and certainly made a case of how important education is to the town, and talked about why Rhode Island is lagging behind other states in New England, and why that's certainly a competitive disadvantage for us. And so, I know it's a big ask, the $1 million, and it's a big ask from the CTA for $594, but we have to do better. And not that I want to be Mr. Negative, but we just need to do better and reduce it. We certainly would like to have those, but we're not really. We don't really have an opportunity. We have some risk already built in here, and to make some more without knowing exactly what's going to happen just wouldn't be prudent at this time. I know that's painful to certain segments of the department, but I tell you too, we really, I hopped on that question on the last public hearing. And when it all is over, what this department is responsible for is you graduate from 12th grade, you graduate from high school with 12th grade credentials, with 12th grade skills. Because, by this report, Rhode Island has a very high population of people who just graduated from high school or didn't graduate from high school. It's a big number. And it bothers me to think that even some of those who are graduating from high school don't have high school level skills. And that was the point of the question, and we went back and forth on whether that was a 7th or 8th grade question, but it is clear that the major point is that we need to graduate our students with an ability to go to secondary education. It does not matter, it doesn't have to necessarily be an associate's degree or bachelor's degree. So there's a great need for skilled workers and companies looking to fill those positions, and we just, in Rhode Island, we're not producing those. And it just happened to be this gentleman's from Cumberland, but it's a statewide issue. We lag way behind in our neighbors, whether it be Massachusetts and New Hampshire and
in Connecticut. So we gotta do better. So that's my quandary here, is that, yeah, we have a big ask, and we're gonna ask Councilor Dwyer and the rest of his colleagues for that, but we need to earn that. We need to go there and show why, and show what we're doing to make it better. I know it's hard, I know that we're working with less, but we still have to do it. I still believe we can do it. So, just to keep that in perspective, I've wrestled with this for the last few days, and certainly we had some discussions with the CTA, and based on just on the reality of the numbers, we need to make it work, and when we make it, and by making it work, we've got to come up with better numbers. And it doesn't necessarily have to be kneecap, but we got to do a better job of ultimately preparing our students so when they finish 12th grade, they're at 12th grade level and not less. That's my spiel. So, right now, anybody, Ms. Sanders?
Just to piggyback a little bit on that, one of the reasons that I stood up here is because there were numbers that I was shocked by when I looked into the data. And for those of you that are in the audience, 51% of the students that graduate from Cumberland High School and go to CCRI are immediately put in remedial classes because the college says they are not prepared for college work. 63%, that was the last number I saw, it could have changed a little bit here or there, only 63% of our seniors are taking the SAT. So our product is not what it needs to be. But in addition to that, and I will be haunted tonight over this, Chairman Mutter usually gets something kind of that bugs him, but this $76,000 figure on this ISS thing is really, really, really upsetting. Because when you multiply 76 by a bunch of years, that's a lot of things people have been in tears about over the past weeks that we can't provide because we wasted money on putting a $76,000 person with no prep, no correcting, and no need for that skill set in that position. So whether it's sports, or it's library, or it's music, I mean, Mr. Pedro makes a pretty compelling case, and instead of spending money on the band, we've spent money year after year on an in-school suspension proctor at $76,000 a year. How do we go to the town council and ask them to pony up $1 million when we're spending $76,000 on an in-school suspension proctor? We on the committee have to get better. If that line item was in this budget last year, I am apologizing to all of you because I didn't know it was in there. Because our job is to hire leaders that we trust and take their recommendations. And you'll notice his first budget, Dr. Thornton catches this, and now I've got a negative $65,000 number. And it is 80 pages, but if it means that all of us have to read 80 pages to come up with line items that are completely reckless, I wouldn't ask Mr. Dwyer or anybody to give me $1 million if I'm spending 76 grand on an in-school suspension proctor. God, I spend my days running around putting kids on in-school suspension. Nobody does that. Dr. Drolet and Jay Masterson, they proctor the kids in the office. We're saying that some days there's 2 or 3 kids only on in-school suspension. $76,000. So until we as a committee make a pledge, and we as school administrators say, I'm going to go through my budget and I'm going to find every single thing that even looks questionable and I'm going to flag it and we're going to talk about it, the district's not going to be able to move forward. I mean, the achievement numbers are already upsetting. This $76,000 figure is going to haunt me for days because we owe you guys better. So I'm sorry about that, and I thank Dr. Thornton for finding it. And I hope that we make the case to the council with the promise to do a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Well, I think actually, I think we've done a lot better. That one's one that certainly, there's always going to be some that sneak by. And it's not because of anything other than the fact that
it's
you don't
just
look
been
at
a
it.
decision that they there's a special education teacher in there. I mean, and the person's moved up in salary now.
Right. Well, yeah, it was a wrong choice, I say sneak by, but certainly there's always those that you look back on and say, well, maybe you could have done it a little differently. And yeah, when I say we have to do better, I mean all of us. I mean, certainly we're not, we don't escape that by any stretch of the imagination. But, I mean, it's just clear. I think sometimes I just don't want to blame anything. I mean, it's clear what we need to do. We need to be better prepared if we're going to compete, and I mean that as a state and as a town. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe I got all irritated on that question, and I used it all on that night, so that's maybe what
Yeah, I was irritated
it didn't
too.
bother me, that question. In any event, is there anyone else? Ms. Willard?
I just want to add that having attended part of that event over the weekend, the one big takeaway I had was the fact that the council seemed genuinely interested in what the school was doing and wanted to hear more about some of the changes that we've made over time with Dr. Thornton's arrival and our subcommittee work in achievement that is really trying to target improvements in content areas. And I do hope, as we had discussed at that time, was that we can engage with the council so that they kind of get the opportunity to come and sit with us, to hear some of the things that may have been unbeknownst to us, may have been about program changes, and we've certainly seen with Dr. Thornton's arrival that things have moved very quickly, and I think it's important to engage in the council in that regard, so I look forward to more participation with that moving forward. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, so at this time, we're going to look for a motion to approve the FY13 budget in the amount of $55,362,530. Mr. Foley, Ms. Passage, second by Mr. Wood. We'll do a roll call for this. Ms. Angie?
Aye.
Mr. Wood? Yes. Ms. Teal?
Yes.
Ms. Foley?
Yes.
Your vote yes, that passes 5-0. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee at this time on the public comment?
Yes, I'd like to.
Hi, I'm Deborah Bissett. I'm the secretary in the library. I've been with the school department for 21 years. I just wanted to make a comment about the teacher that's in the in-school, in-house suspension program. She's not just a proctor in that room. She keeps those kids under control. I mean, you have no idea what those kids do when there's a sub in there. She has a way with them without ever raising her voice. She keeps them under control. She keeps them working. They don't sit there and play games on the computer. They come into the library with a correct written pass to do work. I help them find what they need to find, and they go directly back to that room with the information that they came to the library for. She has a tight rein, and if there's only 3 students in there, sometimes those 3 students can be like 25. You have no idea what that room is like. You can't put a first-year teacher in there, because I've seen first-year teachers in there subbing, and the kids are hanging out of the room. They're just out of control. This woman has such control in that room without ever intimidating or yelling, and they respect her. And I know that she is, just the way about her is making a change in their lives, the way that she treats them. And they're very respectful when they're with her. And I just had to say something because she's not a proctor. She's a special needs teacher, and she really knows her stuff. And that situation, most of those kids need someone that they can look up to, and she helps them with the work. The teachers deliver work to her. They work. If you walk by that room, they're all working, with her in there. I don't know, I just had to say something because that room needs someone with some experience. That's not somewhere where you can just put for 3 days a week, and then the kid gets to go home for the other 2 days. I mean, they're getting something out of being in that room. They know they're segregated from the rest of the kids, yet they're doing their work. I don't know.
No, I think, no, that's that's a point well taken, and certainly, that person, I don't know who that person is, and I think it's nice that you come up and speak to us, the qualifications. I think for us right now, and the way that we would look at it, and I'm not saying that this is, I'm guilty of it all the time, I gotta make the number work, and then
But you can't-
I gotta remember what's behind the number.
Right, and I don't want you to think that you let something slip by, because like he told you, she started off at rock bottom, and she's been here at least 5 years, right?
So that was, I've been here.
That was
So
another-
that's just what happens.
Right.
You know, in
Slip
any
by,
job.
it sends the wrong connotation, as if there's a, but even at that, I mean, when you budget, whether it be on the school side or on the school side, you are obviously going to try, a good finance director on either side is going to hit some bets in there. I don't think that's inappropriate. So, well, when I said, sneak by, that's just bad wording on my part, and I think too, like I said, I'm guilty of it all the time, as far as like, I gotta make the numbers, I gotta remember what's behind the number. And every once in a while, especially on the municipal side, and this is no disrespect to the council, but that's more of what you do there. And over here, there's a lot more right on each one of those numbers. And
But
it's
you're
painful to
talking,
say.
you're talking about, how, our reading and math numbers are down and this and that. And then you're willing to cut corners, but yet, if you look at the administration page, and if you see that they've added new people, and they're making more than the teachers are making, but yet they get their raises, and they get assistance and whatnot in this budget, but yet you're cutting back on teachers, and yet you're going and spending money on professional development.
Well, we heard in every single meeting of achievement, we heard about a dire need for professional development. The budget actually reflects 2 net positions lost, there's 10 new ones, there's 12 reductions. So I would just differ with you on that. In this economy, for everyone to not be taking a pay cut, including any staff, whether they are union or not union, and to only lose 2 positions, I think is not bad. And that's probably as conservative of a phrase I could use when I say not bad. 2 reductions, no one's losing, no one's getting a pay cut, and we're still trying to move forward. There's a lot of things in play there. I wouldn't get in, for me personally, I wouldn't get into the administrative, non-administrative tension. But it's not just Cumberland. It is a statewide issue as far as what we're producing. And I'm not going just on test results, although like we weren't there that night. We need to do better. I don't know what that means to anybody, but to me, we're not doing enough. And so we could maybe differ on that, but I'm just sticking on your point.
Maybe if you came in the school and walked around and saw what needed to be, things can be seen just by walking through the corridors.
Well, if that would help, I'll be here, but there's budget reality that we face. And like I said that before, they're not pleasant, but in spite of them, we need to do better. And if that means we have to work harder, then we have to work harder.
Everyone's working harder.
We all have to be a little bit better.
Look at how many students there are from like 8 years ago. I mean, everyone's working harder. The classrooms are filled. You're paying overages. Instead of just getting the more teachers, why pay overages? Get another teacher to teach that course instead of having kids that don't even have chairs. There are classrooms that the kids don't even get to sit. Okay? Cumberland. I don't know if there's a little more going on than people talk about.
Just one fast point of clarification. In terms of teacher PD, if you have money earmarked for PD, it can't be spent on other things, it's for PD. When I first came here, we had approximately $130,000 from several years of Article 31, back when we had a PD line. That's the line we're using. Even if I wanted to, I could not spend that money on anything else. That's for PD and teachers and administrators. Just to let you know, that's not spent to do.
But no one says you have to send those people out to PD. You're sending those teachers out. You're just not paying for subs. And those hours that the kids aren't getting the regular classroom.
Okay, my response to that would be, for example, when I came here, I was working a lot on assessment, and I can tell you, the admin teachers in Cumberland have gotten minimal training in assessment, minimal, shockingly so. And I started to turn that around. We sent a vertical team this fall, the team's going this spring, we speak coming here in May, because that's really where it's at. And if we don't spend the money, we don't get better. So to me, if I have the funds for PD, and I spend it efficiently and effectively, it's value added. Having said that, I wouldn't just send folks out and have PD that's kind of fluffy, it has to be value added. But to me, knowing what assessment can do for a district, it's critical we get better at this. And right now, we're not there, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Can you talk a little bit about the calendar, how that's changed?
Yeah, the calendar we passed in Cumberland, next year we have 4 PD days built into the calendar at no cost, and should incur actually less subs. A day in August, a day around November 5th, January, maybe March, 4 PD days built in. We're already modeling the August day, I'm looking at a math focus, no surprise. November day, K-8, a science focus with GemsNet, and then I figured out the last 3 days. But really are trying to maximize our time.
And also, if I recall, that there wasn't a duplication, so you wouldn't necessarily have all elementary staff at a math PD. It would
Correct.
be the appropriate staff at that, and other staff members who may not need a PD in math can be doing other types of.
I mean, here's one point, in our achieving something meetings, we talked a lot about how some folks didn't know each other in the art department. So if we have a math PD day in August, we might have a vertical art day, and K-12 do it all together in August. So those are 4 examples where we will draw subs. But I see your point. I guess my counter is you have to get better at what you're doing. It has to be meaningful PD, but we have to do it. And right now, coming in here as a new person, I see a lot of work around assessment. It has to be done.
And I just tell you from my perspective, and if I was sending, my children do go here, if you're graduating from high school, you should have 12th grade skills. And I don't think everybody who's graduating from high school has 12th grade skills.
That doesn't start in the 9th grade.
I don't really care where it starts.
I
know that's where, because it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you finish. And so my point is just clearly, of everything here, we have to do better. We have to make sure they graduate with 12th grade skills, because if we don't, they might be walking around with a piece of paper in their hand, but it's not going to get it
If
done.
you have a 9th grader that's in regular ed and is only reading at 3rd grade level, you're not going to get them up to 12th grade. You're going to have them drop out in a couple of years. And this is a fact, okay?
And the point is that a good thing?
That you have to grab them before 9th grade.
We're doing everything we can to grab it as early as possible.
And why did this kid even make it to 9th grade anyway?
Now you're talking my language. I'd like to know that too.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
those things have to be looked at too.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
I just had a quick question. And maybe it's better to ask it outside the meeting, but I think a lot of people have a similar type question. How does the per pupil expense get calculated when you're coming up with a figure for Blackstone Valley Prep? Is that...
I'll defer to Renato. I believe it's proportional over several years.
Yeah, eventually we're going to be paying a certain dollar amount per pupil expense to Blackstone Valley Prep, and they didn't expect school districts to absorb that cost all at once, so they're increasing it a little bit each year. It used to be $5,600 we paid for kids to go to charter school, then it went to $58 change last year. The next year it's going to be almost $6,200, and it'll go up until we get to, a dollar amount that, that will equal, I guess, the portion of the basic education plan piece.
Is that a number that's set by RIDE, or is that set by...
That's set by RIDE.
It's set by RIDE. Okay. Because that sort of clarifies it. I mean, because some students cost more to educate than others. Special education, for example, is more expensive. I'm assuming RIDE takes that into account.
Well, yeah, they do, but we don't have many special education students at charter schools.
Well, that's my point, is it's more expensive for us per child than it is for charter schools, so...
Well,
If you take into account special ed,
Yeah.
they're not.
As far as special populations, we may run around, say, 16 to 18% special education population.
About 8.
The charters, I'm not sure the exact number, is that, I eventually guess 8%. I don't know the exact number, but it's less than public.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have any special-
Is there anyone else? Ms. Ed?
Just a quick response, when you guys say 8% at charters, what charters are we speaking about?
I'm saying charters in general across Rhode Island, and my reading or looking at has been, I don't think as of yet I've seen any kind of a charter, even whoever, that has a sped sample representative of public school. I think some of the charters have representative samples of the SES group, but not the special education group. And that really is the devil in the details, and you have a full continuum of special education services, autism classrooms, et cetera. That's where the public schools get a lot of costs. I think a lot of the charters are still trying to grow, and that's growing pains. It has a whole continuum. That's where it gets expensive. So I think across Rhode Island, all the states in the country, charters struggle with that. That's on scale. That's why I think you still see a lesser population special education.
Just a point of reference, which may not be relevant, I teach at a charter school in Providence that's at 30+% special ed. It's probably because 50% of our ninth graders came in right out of Providence Public into the ninth grade, but certainly there are charters that have very high special ed populations. It's a huge challenge. Probably not the norm. Thanks.
Anyone else? Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ms. Sandy moves adjournment. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Bolio. Any discussion? There is no discussion on adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against, that passes 5-0. Adjourn at 8:35 p.m. Thank you.